Welcome back to the Inside Britbowl podcast for a special episode. We are going to bring you a series that we are calling the Champions Series. We caught up with all the national champions from this summer, and I love having these conversations, being able to learn and hear the insight from the best of our sport. I always enjoy them. I always learn something, and I hope you do too. So a number of us caught up with all those national champions. First up this time around are the Bristol Aztecs. Me and Kiwi caught up with Pete Jones, the head coach of UWE, as well as Bristol Aztecs, and also their new starting quarterback from this summer, Ethan Gretzinger. So we hope you enjoy this episode. We will bring you more. We'll catch up with Solent Thrashers women. We catch up with London Blitz and many, many more as well. So hope you enjoy it. Come back again for the next one. So I'm delighted to be joined by Pete Jones, coach Pete Jones, the head coach of the Bristol Aztecs, and Ethan Gretzinger, who's the quarterback of the Bristol Aztecs, and also both of the UWE Bullets as well, aren't you? So joined by Kiwi as always, and part of our Champion Series, we wanted to catch up with you guys post Britbowl. Congratulations there with on the final, obviously getting over the line this year compared to obviously the heartache of last year. But coach, have you managed to come down from the experience and reflect on the victory a couple of weeks ago?
Yeah, I've definitely reflected on it a little bit. I think it's my kind of involvement in football is just so sort of constant and sort of year round, and has been for such a long time, that it doesn't really feel like a sort of campaign or a season. It's just like constantly going. And, you know, sort of we won the bowl on the Sunday, and then on the Tuesday I'm speaking to prospective coaches and players, and it kind of like never really ends. And you know, yeah, finally winning the Britbowl definitely feels like a big step, but it doesn't feel like the end of a journey. It feels like the start of a journey, which is positive, you know.
Brilliant. And for Ethan, this stuff's easy, isn't it? Just turn up for one season and come away with a ring.
Yeah, I mean, again, you know, so grateful to Coach Pete and everything he's kind of done for me and my teammates. Kind of, you know, starting at UWE, having the opportunity to go win a ring at UWE. Then next thing you know, I'm playing more football. I'm playing another, 10, 12 games of football, and I get to win another ring with the Aztecs. So it's been a great, I guess, 9 months in the UK. So 2 rings in 9 months so far. So
it has to be.
You're making it look far too easy, and
I was gonna say some kind of record, I'm sure. I was gonna say, I guess, obviously, Ethan, you weren't kind of here for the sort of heartbreak, shall we call it, last year of the original final. But I'd be interested to know, I guess, from both of you on different perspectives, how you think that kind of influenced your season this year. Obviously, some of the players returned, you know, the growth of the season. But, you know, I guess if you come away last year, you know, on the end of a loss, you can take that one way and kind of use it to build in this season, and then obviously you come away successful. I'd be interested to know, you know, how you kind of work with the team to turn that into a positive for this season, I guess.
I mean, from my perspective, like I kind of said, winning the Britbowl, it isn't like the bookmark to the season. Like the journey is like continue and it doesn't stop. And it's the same as last year. You know, we lost the Britbowl last year. We could have made that a really big thing. It was just another game of football. And you know, these days we play the London Warriors 3 times a year. We just play them 3 times a year. It's what we do. Yeah, we lose more of them than we win. We won last week. But yeah, last year we lost to them. You know, there were learnings we took out of the game. We reviewed the game film. Just like now, you know, we won the Britbowl like a couple of weeks ago. We're not resting on our laurels. You know, Leiden has reviewed all the O-line film and put all the grading out today. Like I say, we're already kind of speaking to players and coaches and planning for next year. And like, if you want to, you know, the London Warriors are a really good football team, right? And we've managed to just nudge ahead of them. If we want to stay ahead of them, look, we ain't going to do it by, you know, kind of relaxing and enjoying the fact that we've won it. We just got to keep going again. And that was the same last year. We didn't get too bogged down with the fact we lost. You know, we just go again. You just keep working, you know?
Yeah,
Keep working,
I mean, 100%. I mean, even after the championship, and it's like this inherent thing that you have to kind of get back into the gym, or you kind of get back into your playbook in some way, shape, or form. And maybe that's a little unhealthy mentally, but that's just who we are as people, right? We're competitors, and we realize that it's not a matter of just winning the Britbowl, right? It's a matter of progression last. You can't just, you enjoy it, right? I'm here, celebrating, traveling a little bit, but it doesn't stop. The work really never stops, if you're really trying to make a real impact on the game itself, right, in the UK. And I think, again, I'm going to say it throughout the time of our interview, big shout out to Pete Jones here. Like, the impact that he's made on the game in the UK is unbelievable. The opportunity that he's able to give guys like myself coming from the United States, getting a master's at Kiwi, and then playing really competitive, great football for another, 4 or 5 months is just an unbelievable experience. But, like he said, like we're saying, it doesn't, the 2 or 3 times that we'll have to play the Warriors again, and all those other teams, competing in our division.
And there's a lot of an awful lot of coaches and players on the team that feel it that the same way. And I'm kind of chatting to various coaches on Monday about what we're going to do next year. Straight after the Britbowl, there's still guys getting pictures taken with the trophy. And Ethan comes up to me and says, "Listen, coach, what we're going to do next year? Maybe we should think about that." And like, we're not resting on our laurels. We're just constantly trying to put one foot in front of the other and just get sort of better every practice, every game, every week, every month.
And I'd love to pick up on a point there for you, Ethan, where what was the mood of the camp when you arrived first day with the Bristol Aztecs? Obviously, you knew a lot of the coaches and probably some of the players through UE to start off with, but did you feel that we've got to take that next step mentality, or was it more something that you're used to and just going through the same preparations for a season?
I mean, there is a little bit of that aspect of, yes, this is something I've done before, right? You kind of get into that fall camp mode, even though it was around March, April, we kind of get into that fall camp mode for, the Aztecs. But I feel like the leaders on this team, like Sean Cook, Ryan Davies, Idrissa Fofana, these guys, Will Bunce on the offensive line, these guys who have been on the Tex for so many years, I felt responsible for what I could contribute, right? You can control what I can control in the moment. And it was to, kind of flip a switch mid-season and realize, hey, we have to bear down every single week, really get into game film, make sure people are on their P's and Q's, practices, that we have that time together, and make sure that we're focusing. I mean, when I walked in, I just knew I had to do my job because I know how hard these guys have worked, for 10 plus years. So, I did lean on the leaders. I leaned on, Coach Pete and the coaching staff. And I just had to do my job, right? My job was pretty easy. I just had to go be a football player and, toss the ball to some really talented receivers.
I'm sure we'll get into the nitty gritty of some of the talent that you were around, but just before we get into the detail, Coach, we caught up this time last year, it pretty much, wasn't it, where you emphasized to me that you just want to play the best year in, week out. If you can play the best, you'll play the best week in, week out. This year, you've had the extra challenge of the London Blitz as well. So you've kind of seen that improvement within your division. But then you've also got the CEFL mixed into your season this year as well. How has that been when you reflect on last season as well? How has this season gone overall for you when you reflect on it?
Yeah, I mean, it's gone really well. I think, the CEFL thing was kind of was great. It presented a lot of new challenges. I think we had 10 games in 12 weeks or 9 in 11 or something like that because, there's just a lot of games to play, and you need a big squad to deal with that. And we had 3 consecutive weeks where we went Dutch champions, British champions, Swedish champions. And, that's like a lot of football against a lot of good teams, And I think the home game against Amsterdam was the biggest kind of event we've hosted. There were a lot of people there. Commercially, the game was great. It kind of covered all its own costs for the stadium and all that stuff. And the sort of the atmosphere was fantastic. So that was like really, really good fun to have that home European fixture and all the excitement. And I'd probably say that, like, you know, I've never enjoyed playing against teams that are not good at football and beating them up and scoring loads of points. Like, it's not that enjoyable. When I was Apache head coach years ago, we beat the Portsmouth Dreadnoughts like 114-6. We went 6-0 down and then scored 114 points. But like, it's not that fun. And probably my most favourite game of the year was the away game at Karlstad. And it was pretty brutal, right? And Ethan had a tough day that day. But, it was kind of like, after that game, it was like, okay, we know where we are now. And, there's that kind of whole thing, like, you're not comparing yourself against the London Warriors or the Karlstad Crusaders or whoever. You're comparing yourself against like who you are and what your standards are you're aiming for. And you get a real kind of gut check in terms of where you are when you go out and play the Swedish national champions and they just beat you up. And they weren't like that kind of finessey. We had DBs getting pancaked. We had receivers getting jammed at the line of scrimmage who couldn't get off the line of scrimmage. They're just a really physical, tough team. And you play them and you think, okay, well, we fought today. And yeah, we lost 34-0 or whatever it was. But, we picked up some first downs. AJ had a few nice catches and took some big shots off some guys. And Gretz made some plays on his feet and took some big hits and recovered and got up and went again. And it's just about playing, like I say, playing good football against good football teams, and just kind of benchmarking yourself and moving forward and stuff.
I was going to say, I'd be interested to know, Ethan, obviously you talked about the home game that you played in the European League and how it was probably the biggest game that you hosted. How did that compare to you to playing, obviously, in the US, where you're largely used to much bigger crowds and much bigger stadiums? Do you think, as a Britbowl community, we're kind of starting to get there, or did that game maybe feel a little bit more like what you're used to?
I mean, I don't really think it's, at the end of the day, I would rather even not compare. I think that the experience as a whole we were able to accomplish that day is, no, personally, and then after the game, I'm being introduced to people who have been around the club and people who love the city of Bristol, and I'm falling in love with the city of Bristol while I've been out here, and it's just so nice to meet people that care. And I think that's, as a quarterback, as a player, no matter what country you're in, when you're able to meet fans and meet real people who care and who appreciate what you're doing on the field and appreciate what the team is doing for the city, that means more than anything. And I think you'll find that, in the Britbowl community, and I think you find that in the States as well. So I think as a whole, I was so happy, and I was so happy for Coach P. I was so happy for the whole staff. And again, like the CEFL stage at home, like it's unbelievable. That's what these guys have been working for such a long time.
And the first victory for a British team in a very long time in one of those European. I don't know the stat off the top of my head, but it feels like it was at least a decade since a British team had won in Europe, because before the Manchester Titans. Tamworth.
I think, did Tamworth beat Copenhagen in 2017? Maybe
it was a 17. I knew it was close. Yeah. It was certainly way before COVID, wasn't it? And an amazing feat for you guys to do as well. And Coach, when you set that challenge of the CEFL, whilst also probably setting yourself that target that we want to get over that line and get that championship ring, talk about that timing. It almost felt like, from the outside looking in, have they done too much before they've got that Britbowl ring? Now that's obviously us looking in. Your program better than us. What did it feel onerous to you to take on that challenge on top of trying to get that first championship ring?
I was kind of mindful of it, right? And we kind of managed the season accordingly, and we knew that there would be like a number of guys who were starters and stuff who wouldn't be able to travel to Karlstad because of the sort of time and money commitment and that kind of thing. And there were guys that sort of played a lot of football at Karlstad that maybe didn't play much in the bowl game, for example. And so you do get some kind of spreading out of the kind of load like across the squad, and having a decent sized squad is important. But also, like, we we were very focused on the Britbowl. And whilst we had a lot of congestion in terms of fixtures early in the season, by the time we got to the sort of July period, it was like, a game every fortnight. And then we had, I think, a 3-week gap at one point, and then we had 2 weeks between the last game of the regular season and the semi-final. So towards the end of the season, we got that space, we got healthy, and we were able to kind of manage it. But yeah, early in the season, when we're playing 9 games in 11 weeks or whatever, it felt like a lot. But we got a big squad. You need to get the guys game time. We're fortunate that we're in a position where in quite a few of the games we could get a lot of the depth game time, and that's important. But I kind of wouldn't have had it any other way, and we'll absolutely be in the CFL again next year because it's more good football. It's what we want to do. But I also I really think that the UK needs to be represented in that competition, and we haven't got an ELF team. I don't really, with the level of the support that there is for the game in the UK, I don't really think that's practical. But we definitely at least need a team in the CEFL. And I've always been a strong supporter of like all the GB programs, and I played GB as a player, and it was like a massive deal for me. And we need to be supporting the national programs, but also we need a domestic team playing in Europe every year. I think it's really important, and I feel like while we're the best or the best team that wants to go in it, which we were this year, I think we've got like a duty to try and do it. And it's not easy. And I remember going into going this year and doing it. I got a message from Luke Carlton, the old OC from the Manchester Titans, afterwards, just saying, fair play, well done. It's an absolute mission. The organisation's massive. The hard work is massive, but you've done it, and you've kind of flown the flag, and I think that's important. And I think it's really important that we are represented as a country in it every year.
Yeah, it's interesting because that's certainly a lot of the feedback that we got from the Titans guys when we spoke to them this, the beginning of the season before, when they were obviously going to fly the flag for us as well, and totally get that point. Kiwi, you're going to come in?
I was just going to say, I think, did you feel that sort of support from the entire Britbowl community with that kind of, European trip? Because I think sometimes in Britbowl, at least, and I guess generally in competitive sport, we can get a bit narrow-minded. This is my team, that's not my team, this is who I support, that's who I don't support. But I would like to think that you would have felt that most people, I won't say all, most people were kind of behind you in both of those fixtures. Did you sort of get that feel from the community?
I don't know. I wouldn't necessarily say I did, but I didn't feel like people were not behind us. I think it definitely felt like quite a few of the Titans guys were behind us because, we had messages from quite a few of them. George Foster came down and watched the game against Amsterdam, and they did it last year. And I think they know and appreciate what is involved in it. And they kind of like tip their cap to us, I think as we did to them last year when they went in it, and there's definitely like a lot of mutual respect between us and the Titans. But yeah, I mean, I don't think necessarily there was. You would say there was a lot of support from the community, but there wasn't any kind of negative views about it. I almost feel like some people would have rather we'd gone in and failed than won a game and made a decent account of ourselves. But that's kind of like people, and that's fine. People are people.
Tribalism.
I would. Yeah, and that's fine. And Britbowl is kind of quite tribal, right? And there are folks out there that are not tribal. Like we have a rivalry with the London Blitz that is healthy and fun and exciting, and we chat to their coaches and we share film, and that's kind of how it should be. With the Warriors, they don't share film. They're not interested in any kind of engagement at all. Like that's fine. That's them. That's fine. But I think Britbowl will be in a better place if more people were sort of engaging, sharing film, and that we'd be in a better spot then.
And Ethan, do you find that quite different to how it would operate for you in the States, I guess? Is that kind of a key difference between what we have and how it works here with that kind of, sharing and trading of film, or, that kind of tribal community thing where people are quite secretive, I guess, to an extent, right?
Right. And then there's people who are a little bit selfish, not to name names, but it's just how the game kind of goes, right? And you want to pick your battles and where you can win. And I think we're right now. I think like the Manchester Titans, but the Bristol Aztecs are the model for how Britbowl teams should be operating within BAFA right now, right? We do a ton of media. We work hard. We have access to coaches, access to players. We do, we have a physio. We have all these things. We share film, right? We try to promote the game in every way that we can for the good of the game in the UK. It's not just ourselves, but for the good of the game within the UK. And I think Manchester Titans, I know, we're praising a lot of the Manchester Titans, but that's a class act club that, we were able to come out there to Bellevue, play a really competitive game, really fun game. And they were a class act afterwards, right? And we felt the support from them. And yeah, I mean, it's more of the same, a little different here and there, but right, you want to be competitive and you want to find avenues to maintain that competitive edge. So I think, like I said, I think more teams, I think, will be following the model that the Bristol Aztecs have kind of set forth in the game.
Absolutely, I think both programs are doing a great job at showing certainly a model that people can aspire to at the very least. And so if we before we get into sort of like the nitty gritty of it, I was very interested to look back on the season, and I wondered what the team or the program. I don't know if Ethan, you want to come in before coach takes on the whole program, but from an offensive point of view, you have that amazing result again in the CEFL, and then you end up traveling to the London Warriors, don't you? And you get that first loss, which is obviously something that you don't want. Obviously, you want to aspire to not do that, but it's the same team that obviously they lost in the final to last year. What was the mood of the camp like? And obviously you've bounced back, but did you feel as if you had to then bounce back after that? But then you went obviously on to lose in the CEFL. So I wondered what sort of like give a picture of what the team was feeling like, and maybe an offensive picture at that point in this season, because you've then obviously gone on to greater things from that.
Yeah, I mean, I think the team definitely took it to heart. Offensively, we took it to heart. And, not putting up points in the CFL game to me is a personal, that's on me, right? And that loss to London, that's again on me, right? That's my preparation, what I was able to contribute. Those guys have all worked hard, and yeah, but it was a football game in week 3 in the grand scheme of things.
Okay.
So, you know what I mean, right?
Yeah.
But
yeah.
if we're gonna be honest, there's no one else to blame on there other than myself, right? And I wear that card, knew what they had to do. But if anything, it woke me up, and it flipped the switch for me. We hit that midseason. I talked to coach after Carlstad, and there were some things that I had to figure out and get done, and understand that, hey, I can't. This isn't UE or this isn't us going down and putting up 50 like it's nobody's business, right? There's work to be done, and I had to focus up a little bit, and then once I did, I think we saw the result, right? Now we're Britbowl champions.
I can see Coach smiling. Take us through it then. You've obviously bounced back from those 2 defeats, but what describe to us where you went from that point.
Yeah, I mean, the way I always looked at it, right, is that what matters is where we got to at the end of the season, in the Britbowl, and there were always going to be like ups and downs throughout the season, right? And for me, if you've got a team like absolutely humming and playing out of their socks in like week 9, when you're 2 weeks into the playoffs, they're going to be running out of steam, and you got to get them kind of like. You've got to get them up a few times in the season where you have a few big wins and everything's clicking. You cannot keep it like that for 3 or 4 months. Like there's going to be some lower tempo practices, some opportunities to fix some stuff. You cannot have guys like chomping at the bit, ready to like tear people's heads off for like 9 months of the year. It's just not practical. And, last year, we, the all kind of sights were on that kind of away semi-final at Manchester, winning that and getting to the Britbowl. And we did it. And then it's okay. It's like, okay, we got to sort of figure out what our plan is for the next couple of weeks. Whereas this year, it was like we realised that if you're trying to win a Britbowl, you can't have all eyes on winning a semi-final. You've got to have all eyes all season on winning the Britbowl. And that was kind of where our focus was. And there was potential for an upset at Bellevue in that semi-final, right? And we went into that game a little bit undercooked. And I knew we were a little bit undercooked because I knew we couldn't be popping off, in the 2 weeks running up to the Manchester game and then maintain that for another 2 weeks. So, we didn't really do any contact. We didn't do a lot of heavy scrimmage in the kind of run up to that Manchester game. And it was like, okay, this is probably going to hurt us for the Manchester game. And there's potential for a banana skin here, but we are not focusing what we're doing now on beating Manchester. We're focusing what we're doing now on beating the Warriors in the Bowl in 3 weeks. So let's do what we need to do to get there. And we'll trust that we'll take care of Manchester on the way. And we were able to do that. And there's an element of kind of faith there and a little bit of a kind of leap of faith. And at one point in the third quarter up at Manchester, it was a bit like, oh, did we do the right thing here? But and ultimately we kind of did, right? And I think every season, you take another little step on the journey and you understand how to manage it a little bit more. And, going away to Karlstad, we figured out how to manage that a little bit. And we've got some lessons from that hopefully we can take into it next year. And, Ethan made a comment about him kind of getting more focused as the season went wrong. And I think he did. And, early in the season, he was enjoying his social time in Bristol, Barcelona, wherever he was on any given week. And, I think like the players, right, they've got lives. They're gonna have holidays. They're gonna have social things going on. And, the players cannot be about football like all of their social time. Like they need some time to decompress. They need some time to be young men and have fun and do all that kind of stuff. And, in the case of Ethan, I just trusted that when stuff got real, he would kind of dial in like he needed to, and he did do. And I think a little bit of the fact that he was able to do that was that he did have some freshness, and he got back to the States for a month in the summer, and he'd been able to let his hair down a little bit in the early part of the season, and that's fine. And I have to do that sometimes as well, But for the last month of the season, we were all really locked in, and every year we kind of up the ante a little bit, and for the playing staff this year, we were like a 3-day-a-week program, so calls on a Wednesday night, practice Thursday, practice Saturday. For the staff, we're a 4-day-a-week program because we have staff calls on a Tuesday night, and then we have the player calls on a Wednesday night, then we have practice on a Thursday. But if you're going to have staff calls on a Tuesday, you need to be watching film and prepping on a Monday night. So in reality, for the staff, we're kind of like a 5 or 6 day a week program. And we just up the ante, and we were doing that throughout this season. And in terms of, getting over some offensive struggles we had early in the season, we, at the start of the year, right, we had a couple of guys on the staff that had the skills to be offensive coordinator but didn't want to, and we had a couple of guys that wanted to but probably weren't quite there yet. And at the start of the season, I took the view that I would take it on, and we'd kind of see how we went over the first few weeks of the season. And we had some bumps in the road, and we got to a point in mid-season where Rian was the right choice, the right option. He came to me with like a really kind of clear idea of how he saw us progressing. It made loads of sense to me, and I was kind of relatively confident when I decided that I would do it at the start of the year that I wouldn't be doing it by the end of the year. But the idea that exactly where you're going to be in terms of all your coordinators every February, it just isn't really realistic. Like, you need to be prepared to make changes, and we've effectively had a change in offensive coordinator this season and last season, and both years it's helped us. And you need to be like adaptable, and I think we've kind of shown this year again that we can be adaptable. And if we hadn't done that, I don't think we win the bowl.
We're talking.
Yeah, 100%.
I was gonna say, we're talking about the kind of losses building you into the season. I'm interested to know if that draw that you got against the London Warriors at the end of the season kind of bolstered you going into the playoffs and ultimately the bowl, that you could maybe finally get past them. I think, as a player, I suspect that even those little things probably added to the sort of momentum that you had going into the finals.
Yeah, I think they probably did a little bit. I mean, a couple of years ago, um, we beat them comprehensively at home. So we've done it before. It's not like they've got a 10-year kind of win streak against us. Like, we have done it. I think we were confident we could do it. Like, they are a good team. They are well coached. It's always going to be a kind of scrap. And I think that sort of that game in week 10 was, both teams were kind of keeping a little bit up their sleeve and were being a little bit kind of cagey. We had a couple of guys that were hurt that needed some rest for the playoffs. They did as well. Yeah, I don't think anyone kind of reads an awful lot into that game. But, I always talk about games, right? You can play really well in a game and lose, or you can play quite badly and win. And I always kind of talk about percentages, and I kind of say, if we play them 10 times, I think we probably win 6 or we win 5 or that kind of thing. And, it got to a point at the end of the season where, how close the games have been the last few years. It's kind of like, well, if we play the London Warriors 2 times, I think we win 1 and lose 1. Do you know what I mean? And it is very close. It is very competitive. And in the bowl game, right? Like, it could have gone either way. Like, we had, I remember James Wilford saying to me in the week running up to the Britbowl, saying I'm pretty confident, but we haven't turned the ball over many times on defense this year, which is a bit frustrating. And I feel like maybe we need to turn it over once or twice in the bowl. And then in the fourth quarter, we had turnovers and almost back-to-back plays from the D line. You know what I mean? So, like, kind of when it mattered, kind of we did what we needed to, on kind of both sides of the ball.
Mm-hmm. And for you, Ethan, I'm intrigued to know kind of what the mentality was like going into that bowl game for you. Obviously, your first time in the final, but also your third time facing the London Warriors. So did anything change for you in the final compared to the 2 regular seasons? We got to say that you are in the middle of an airport. You might have to go soon. So I'm trying to get your thoughts on the final before you have
I'm
to
getting
go.
on a flight to Bristol. I can talk football all day, right? I would say for me, without sounding heinous, it was another football game. At the end of the day, it's another football game, right? You have to go out there, you have to do your job. And if anything, I was so glad that we're able to tie in that last game of the regular season. I'm so glad that we didn't win, right? Because that would tell the entire team that that was good enough, right? That was okay. That was enough to win that football game. And maybe some people take their foot off the gas, right? They don't, prepare as much, or they don't take it as seriously, even though that's insane to say, but who knows? Maybe they value something else in their life a little bit more than they usually would had they won that football game at the end of the regular season. So I was so glad that we tied. I was so glad to see the fire from all these guys. And I mean, yeah, it was another football game. We just had to go out there, do our jobs, make plays, and like Coach said, right, our defense made plays when we needed it most. And yeah, I couldn't, that's why we won the football game, right? Defense, special teams, right? And offense just had to, take care of the football, and then we go from there, right? Put up points when we need to. We made field goals, and we won the football game.
Wow, a field goal that could have changed everything on reflection in that
Yeah, and it
second
ends up being the
Warriors
field
season
goal that
game,
wins it
right?
for us, right? Same exact score. We end up kicking
Yeah,
that field goal, and we end up winning the game in the bowl. So
yeah. That's awesome, isn't it? Isn't that incredible how it's changed that way? And I'd love to know at the beginning of Britbowl, obviously you get the ball first, if memory serves. You throw a lovely ball over the middle for AJ Carr, and he and unfortunately gets ripped away from him. And then they come back and they throw what looked like on screen looked like a 30 to 40-yard bomb on the next play. It sounds like I know what your answer is going to be, but did you feel any sort of pressure at that point, or was it a case of you going next drive? I feel
yeah,
as
you
if I
hit
know
it
your
right on the
answer
money.
there.
If anything, it just felt like we kicked off first, right? I mean, it wasn't a difference, and I know AJ Carr will say the same thing. I know he completely forgot about it the second it happened because until you reminded me, I forgot that he fumbled. To be
Yeah,
honest, right? We went out, next drive,
yeah.
next assignment, right? Next play, we moved the way down the field, kicked a field goal, right, and then got the game going, got the game going the way that we needed it to go. So that's all that matters.
Yeah, and from my perspective, when that happened, right, there's still 59 and a half minutes of football left. Do you know what I mean? So that there's a lifetime of football left in the game. And my kind of approach, always right, is to try and empower the guys to go out and make plays. And like, if someone makes a mistake, they know they've made a mistake. AJ didn't need me going up to him, banging on about 3 points of contact and holding on to the ball and all that kind of stuff, right? Like we had plans for AJ to have like a 10 catch game, and he doesn't need me saying that to him. Like he'll forget about it and get on with the next thing, and that's fine, you know. And the messaging is all about going out making plays. Like I never really say to guys, you know, don't get this wrong, don't make a mistake, you know. Always assume positive intent, always empower the guys to go out, have fun, play football, make plays. And if someone's trying to make a play and they get something wrong, I'm fine with that because they're trying to make a play. And if we're all trying to make plays, you know, on and off the field, you know, with the commercial stuff, you know, getting fans to the stadium, or whether it's on the field trying to step someone when you've got the ball in your hands, like, you know, as long as we're all trying to make plays, like the sum of all these things will be positive, you know.
And maybe to us,
It's a fantastic mentality to have, isn't it?
I was just going to say, before we
Go on,
lose
Kim.
Ethan out of curiosity, to bookend that with what obviously happened in the fourth quarter, where you kind of got towards the end of the game and then there was that, you know, fumble, turn the ball over. Obviously, the Warriors still, before obviously your defense came up with a massive play right after, but at that point, you know, there wasn't a lot of football left in the game. You know, I guess how did the guys feel coming off the field from that? And then obviously the opposite, to be able to have your kind of defense really step up and get this sort of second fumble recovery of the game.
I mean, I want my guys to, you know, I know that my guys know that I have the utmost confidence in them. And right, and there's 2 minutes left on the clock, right? And we need to go score to go win the Britbowl. I have all the confidence in the world, not only in my teammates and my coaching staff, but myself, that I was going to be able to go get that done for us, you know, regardless. You know, right, London goes down, wants to go, you know, put up points, maybe they kick a field goal, no matter what they do. You give me a minute, 30 seconds, you give me Rian Hudson at OC, all my talent on the outside and the best offensive line in the country, we'll be all right.
That's awesome. And coach, that speaks to your coaching job, but also the mentality of some of your players, that's got to make your life slightly easier as well, hasn't it? Because, you know, it's one thing to come in and do the job that you guys have done, which is get over the line, you know, and win outright. But also to face adversity and come back the way you did on multiple occasions this season. It's a really great job of you guys. And how do you feel about that?
Yeah, I mean, the way I see it, right, is that you know, when you go out and you play that kind of game, all the hay is already in the barn, right? Like the game's going to go how the game's going to go. There's going to be bounces of the ball that go your way, that don't go your way. You know, sometimes you're going to feel hard done by. Sometimes you're going to feel like you've got a little bit of luck. But, you know, I kind of felt confident in that game. And I feel like if you feel confident, if you try and do the right things to win the game, that is more likely to help you win the game than it is to kind of stifle you and make you kind of second guess yourself and make some bad decisions. And I'm not necessarily saying that kind of positive attitude actually makes you more likely to win the game necessarily, but I think it kind of it helps. And I think if you are a little bit negative, a bit defeatist, a bit like, oh no, what's going to happen? I think that kind of trickles down and people start to get nervous and stuff. And, you know, it was kind of like, yeah, we turned the ball over, but then it's like, okay, well, we need to go out and make a play, you know? And again, it's that whole kind of positive intent thing. And, you know, there are some coaches out there that take that to the nth degree, right? Where they'll always run a play on fourth down and they never punt it. Like, that's not me, right? We'll play field position, we'll kick field goals. But, you know, I'm not afraid to, when the moment takes me, when I feel like we need to, I'm not afraid to take like a little bit of a gamble. Like we had one in the semi-final against Manchester where, you know, we've got that short field there, and I was kind of like, if we punt it here, it's probably going to go in the end zone. They're going to get the ball back on the 20. We were on the 35. It was what was it? I think it was 4th and 30? It was 4th and 35. It was 4th and 35. And I kind of felt like, right, we like Manchester were kind of growing into the game a little bit, and I was like, we just need to get him here. And it was 4th and 35, and I was like, let's go for it. And all the coaches on the sideline were like, what are you doing? And James Wolford was like, Ethan was saying that on the field, and James Wilford was like, why are you doing this? As the ball flew through the air into Harry Buckland's hands in the end zone. And he was like, oh, that's why. And for me, right, if you've got an American Q that can do the things that Ethan does, like if you're not going to take some of those chances, it's like having a Lamborghini and keeping it in the garage all year. Do you know what I mean? Like you need to do that occasionally, and also sometimes I think Ethan had a lovely touchdown to Tim in the bowl game and some great passes to AJ as well. But Ethan did most of his kind of damage on the scoreboard like with his feet, and the Warriors, you see a quarterback like Ethan, like you get scared by their arm. You look at the receivers, you look at the arm, it scares you, and then you kind of lose sight of the fact that actually he can run for 2 touchdowns every game in the playoffs, which I think he did this year. You know what I mean? So it's kind of, people would look at the way Ethan plays and they probably wouldn't refer to him as like a dual threat quarterback, but like you look at the stats, like he definitely is. And, he's rushed for a bunch of touchdowns this season. I think maybe 9 come the end of the season, and he's thrown for 20, including the playoffs and the CFL. And I think only 2 picks all year. So, we've looked after the ball all year, and Ethan's been done enough to scare people with his arm and has also done damage on the ground, So it's been exciting to watch and be a part of. And it means that there are times where I'm like, you know what, we will go for it now,
I was going to say, I think you mentioned about, Ethan and the dual threat and the success of your game on the pass, but maybe the sort of unsung heroes you always see in the offense, right, are the offensive line, right, that allow those gaps, those spaces, that protection. I'm a lineman personally, so, I kind of feel that myself. But I don't know, maybe it's back to Ethan. How do you feel about how the O-line has performed to enable you to do your job behind them this season?
I am not the successful quarterback, and being able to have these great interviews with you guys and all these all this greatness and the MVP and all that without those 5 guys up front. It really starts with them. Lawrence, Tom Levick, Rash, Will Bunce. I don't want to forget anybody, and because you got James Viner, Chris Sinigi, Burgess coming in for the final, David Pemberton, right? These guys are incredible. They're so smart, and they understand that I'm going to have to roll out a little bit, right? Sometimes maybe I would just, I feel it. I'm like, hey, defense is shifting over to the pass. They want to drop 8. I want to go, go between my center and my guard, and I want to go right up the middle for 5 yards, live to play another down. And Coach Pete's been yelling at me since day one to start sliding, because I didn't slide very much or very well at the very beginning.
In the Amsterdam game, he was like jumping like body first into people's faces. Just slide, Ethan. It's fine. Just slide.
I know. I think I was just too excited. I'm not really sure what that was all about, but you guys are entirely right in saying that. We do have the best offensive line in the country, and it is a luxury for me, right? I do have time to make plays in the backfield, to work the ball down the field, throw it, and then they open up gaps for me to run the ball. And I mean, that also stems from the threats at wide receiver, and then the threats in the backfield with Joey Impoma and Emmanuel Bawa, right? And that's why we kind of love this game, right? There's 11 guys on the field, and for me to be successful, there's 10 other threats on the field that allow me to be successful. And I mean, what more can you ask for as a quarterback?
And
Coach,
from my perspective, the games are almost always won or lost on the line of scrimmage, and obviously I played offensive line as well, and our O line, we got the better of their D line, like this is the facts, right? And our D line also got the better of their O line, particularly in the 4th quarter, and and it wasn't, it was still very close, it was still very competitive, but I feel like the 4th quarter is when we just kind of overtook them and started to assert some dominance on both sides of the line of scrimmage, and that stuff will kind of change games, right? And it did, and like I say, the line on both sides of the ball did really well, and we've added some new guys that have definitely helped, but we've got a lot of linemen on both sides of the ball that have been around for a long time. Guy like Adrissa obviously has been like a star on defense for us this year. He's one of only 2 guys still on the squad that I played with, and my last year playing Aztecs was like 2012, and I played with Adrissa, and the guy's still going and like leading the Prem in sacks.
Yeah, unbelievable. It feels like, looking in, that was a focus of recruitment for you this year. You certainly upgraded. There's no doubt about it. But was that a focus? Did you feel you needed that to compete?
I mean, you need to try and get better everywhere, right? And there's some other positions where
Of course.
we tried to kind of add guys and we weren't able to, but we were able to add a couple of guys on the O line, which was really positive. But you like historically, we've been like a really young team, right? Like 2 or 3 years ago, someone was doing some stats for BAFA, and they said, "Oh, you've got we'd lost in a semi-final against Manchester, and we had the second youngest team in all of the BAFA adult leagues." And that was only like 3 years ago. And our average age was like 23 or something. And that worked well for us. We had loads of great young players, loads of Pride kids, loads of uni kids, loads of local young guys and stuff. But like to beat the London Warriors, you need some men, right? And it's about maturity. It's about mental kind of robustness. And sometimes you need to hit like a critical mass of kind of veterans that have that kind of maturity, and sometimes the physical size and strength to kind of deal with the kind of the bigger teams over the longer season and stuff. And as a team, we've definitely got slightly older, and I think our average age is probably like 26 now or something. We've definitely got slightly older, but we're also slightly more mature, slightly more adaptable, and more consistent for that.
That's awesome. And so obviously it all culminated in this championship win, which will obviously give you a platform to kind of build on for next year. But how do you build on that, Pete? You've mentioned that a number of times now, where it's just the beginning of a journey. What would your next ambition be then going into next year?
Yeah, so we want to win another Britbowl. We want to win the CEFL, and we want to carry on winning off the field. Growing crowds at home, being more sort of commercially sustainable, and we're fortunate to play in a really good facility at Dings Rugby Club. But there's kind of little things that people don't see. Like we've got like actual fans that turn up to the games now, and not like friends and family, just like folks that have heard about it, seen about it on social media, turn up to the games. We had a family who their kids like sort of 12 or 13 or whatever, and they asked if for his birthday he could run out with the team with a flag. So he ran out with the team with his Aztec flag, and then he came up after another game and he'd made a key ring from me and Dave Pemberton, one of our offensive linemen, and he just decided that Dave Pemberton was his favorite player. And I was like, "Here, Dave, this kid made you a key ring. You're his favorite player." And Dave was like, "What?" And it's like, some of these things. And we had, some kid asked me to sign his football for him, and it's very small, but there's traction growing, and people are interested now. And BBC Radio Bristol are really interested. I'm doing an interview there tomorrow, and there's just more awareness generally. And so, yeah, we want to win the Britbowl again. Yeah, we want to win the CEFL, but we want to keep on winning off the field as well.
I'm going to disagree with you for the first time in this podcast. I don't think that's very small. I think what's unappreciated is how big stuff like that is in this sport. The signing of a football for that kid makes him a player playing alongside the likes of Ethan in 15 years' time. I think that's tremendous to hear, because it's raising that platform for American football to work off, really, isn't it? And I think that's great to hear.
Yeah, and I think it's on the face of it, it's a small event or whatever, but it just shows that kind of interest that's growing. And like I genuinely feel like we can get to a point in the next couple of years where we can have 1,000 people paying to come and watch the game, and then suddenly the club's sustainable, players don't have to pay subs. It's a different thing then, and we genuinely are kind of changing the game in the country, and other teams will do it as well. I know Tamworth, Coventry, and Manchester. They're kind of charging on the gate and getting bums on seats and that kind of thing, and like put a roof over them so they don't get rained on. Give them the opportunity to buy a cup of coffee. Like the product at the top end of the game is worth watching, and I think we showed that in the Britbowl, right? Like you get all kinds of people that watch the stream and were like, "Wow, that was actually a good game of football." And it was a good game of football. And if you can put a good game of football in a decent facility, get a commentator in the stadium and stuff, like we got a chance. So far as people are playing in parks or AstroTurfs with no seats or anything, like there's not a lot of hope, is there? Do you know what I mean?
And I'm so sorry to cut it off whatsoever. I am actually, sorry, mate. I am boarding my flight right now back to Bristol. So I am going to have to cut out right now. But again, so
great to catch up with
grateful
you.
to you guys for the opportunity. hopefully we can talk again soon. Thank you, Coach Pete, for the kind words, and go Aztecs.
Thank you, Ethan. Take care. Safe
Thanks,
flight.
Ethan.
Cheers, guys. Thank you.
Brilliant. And so we just don't end up on that with Ethan disappearing. So obviously that's great aspirations to have, but you know, just before we get out of here, you're on to Kiwi now, aren't you? And on to doing a bit of work there. How's that prep going?
Yeah, it's going well. And, you know, first practice is still sort of 7-10 days away. So I'm in my kind of 3-week off season now. We get another little break at Christmas, obviously. But again, yeah, it's great. Look forward to it. From my perspective, obviously, I've got quite a sort of high level job at the Aztecs. You know, I give the coordinators a lot of autonomy. I feel like, right, if everyone manages up, everyone below you has got some autonomy. If I manage down on the coordinators and don't give them some latitude to express themselves and do what they want, they will be top down on the positional coaches, and you'll end up with no positional coaches. We've managed to grow our staff year on year by, you know, me giving the coordinators latitude, so they give the positional coaches latitude, and you're able to like add to the staff, and that's really important. But what it means is that like I sometimes don't feel like I've done a lot of hands-on coaching during the Aztec season, whereas when I'm at Kiwi, I'm just a positional coach, so I don't have to worry about any of the logistics or, you know, any of the sort of higher level scheme or player management stuff. Like I've just got a position group to coach. I get on with that, and you know, it feels like quite a different experience as a result. But it's really good fun. But you know, this time of year, it's not just about the UE season. I've already got my calendar of Bucks games mapped out, and I'll be going to Barracuda games, scouting. I'll be going to Bath Killer Bee games, Cardiff Cobra games, Swansea Titan games, Bath Spa games. You know, like I'll be getting out to all the local teams, recruiting sort of players, coaches, and you know, again, it's just like it's constant. It doesn't stop. You know,
Yeah.
and that's the way I like it, really. You know.
I was just going to say, I think maybe what I find interesting, and I'm sure many of the clubs would love to learn from, is how you bring people into the organization as staff, right? Coaches, backroom staff, GMs. Like we all know that they're the people, the unsung heroes of American football teams, right? But largely, you know, we're volunteers still in the sport. And as you've mentioned, it's a 5-day-a-week minimum job in season time. So, you know, what's your kind of mentality to bringing people in, keeping them around? Is it the culture of the club? Is it the, you know, the team as a whole? You know, I'm sure there's many people who would love to know what your success is to keep growing and retaining those people in your organization.
Yeah, and I mean, it's like, you know, you just, like, for me, right, you've got to talk to people how you want to be spoken to, and you've got to treat people how you want to be treated. And there are lots of coaches around that are, you know, they've got like a reputation or a personality, and the coaches have like a brand, and they're kind of always pushing that on socials and that kind of thing. Like that's fine. And there's some guys that do that. They're fantastic coaches. Like for me, yeah, me and the club are here for the players, and my staff are also here for the players, and I try and be there for my staff. So everything we try and do is about facilitating the guys, facilitating the coaches, you know, good game day venue, good stadium. You know, I mean, I'm sure I shouted at a couple of players a few times for like odd little things. But like, I'm not really much of a shouter. You know, we'll try and work through problems and solve things. You know, we are adaptable. You know, I had someone tell me this week that someone else they know in Britbowl had let go of their entire offensive staff because they hadn't performed this year. And you're always hearing about coaches getting sacked in Britbowl, and then they go up and start a team up down the road and this kind of thing, right? Like I've been 4 years as Aztecs head coach. I've not moved on a single coach. And you know, not all the coaches are perfect all the time. I'm not perfect all the time. But if a coach isn't working out, like that's on me. If we got a problem with a coach, that is first and foremost my problem, not that coach's problem. And if that coach isn't doing a great job where they are, we try them in a different position, or we develop them. You know, Rian, you know, did a fantastic job in the bowl game as offensive coordinator, right? At the start of the year, he was coaching the running backs, and I was kind of mindful for his development. Even back as far as a couple of years ago, he was helping out at UE, and I got him charting up all the Leeds Beckett blitzes and writing them up and working out all our protection against them, so we knew what we were doing. And then this year he was coaching the running backs, and there's loads of development opportunities within our program and within UE for him to learn. But I wanted him to get a little bit of development outside the program, so I hooked him up with Toby Chesters, and they did some Zoom calls and stuff. You support guys, and then Tarquin Stevenson, who's a guy who's been around Britbowl for years, who is now coaching out at Mission Viejo in California. They're like the 6th ranked high school in the country. Before I actually gave Rian the OC job, I'd kind of hooked him up to go out there with Tarquin, and he's just been out there the last 2 weeks getting involved in like real top level high school football. And that's an example of someone that I've kind of tried hard to like help develop. But I'll try and help all the coaches where I can and help myself. I've been out to the Rheinfire and Nordic Storm, and develop yourself, encourage the other coaches to develop themselves. Treat everyone reasonably, and I think if you've got like a good product and you're doing well, people will want to be involved, and I think our coaching staff will be 1 or 2 people larger next year than it was this year. And, it's you've got to be prepared to take different types of characters. We've got guys that aren't at practice much, that are basically just kind of like analysts and scouts for us and break down game film and help us with that kind of thing. So yes, you need the guys at practice, but if you can get a few guys that are remote and not in Bristol, but they like what our program is and what we stand for, and they want to be involved, we find ways to get them involved as well. And I think far too many people are like, well, if you can't be at practice 2 times a week, and I need a DB coach and you're not a DB coach, or I need a running back coach and you're not a running back coach. Like, football coaches are football coaches. You find a way to make people fit. And I think everyone just needs to be a bit more outward looking and a bit more pragmatic about stuff,
As a 6-foot stick who coached D-line, I know exactly what you mean about about coaching that position. Absolutely. That's awesome. So it's been fantastic to talk with you, as always. I always like picking your brain for sure. Congratulations once again to the Bristol Aztecs for the national championship of 2025. And I'm sure we'll be back talking to you. I'm sure we'll be talking next year with Bristol Aztecs as well. But, Pete, Ethan, if you can hear us, thanks for joining us. Kiwi as well. Thanks again, and thanks for the listeners and the watchers. Anything before we get out of here, Pete?
No, appreciate it. Thanks to you guys, and keep up the good work.